think there was an Italian journalist from the 40s or 50s, Ugo Yetti's name was. He's not really all that well known, but he always said, don't ever mistake intelligence for the views or the actions of people who just agree with you. So you want people to challenge you all the time. So if someone comes up and says, that's too long, just get rid of that, it can be very confronting, but it can also be very liberating.
Welcome back to the last days of Rome. Now, for the detectives among you, yes, I am wearing the same t-shirt again. I'm going to let you in on a little something. We're filming this on the same day, okay? Now, I know a lot of you are going to become disillusioned with the media as a result of me revealing that. You're going to realize for years you've fallen for a cheap spectacle. You're going to think to yourself, what is reality anymore? What does all of this mean? What am I doing with my life? Shh. Don't worry, because we've got a great chat coming up with the one and only Santo Cilauro, and he'll help you forget about why your life's not going great. With Santo, we talk about his love of football, what's going on with Ange Postecoglou, how he had to move, thank God you're here, and tailor it for an Italian audience, and of course his overall love of comedy writing. It's a great chat. Forget your worries. Enjoy it. Santo, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Ray.
You recruited Sam Pang from Community Radio. I heard you talking about this for Santo Salmonet during the World Cup in 2010, right? It was the first.
2010 was our Santo Salmonet's Cup Fever, yeah, that was the show.
Since then, Sam Pang has become a household name in Australia. Did you want to apologise for that?
Yes, I do. I'm so sorry. It never was intended to happen. It was just a joke that went very badly right from the start. I think Sam was actually working at the Clifton Hill bottle shop. Those of you who don't live in Melbourne, it's an interesting part of town. In fact, where I grew up, really, in Collingwood and Clifton Hill. Sam was doing community radio, a place called Triple R. I think by then he may have been given his own show on SBS, which we still give him shit about. Stay ADBC, which was like Speaks and Specs, but for history. And he asked me on that show. But I'd already looked at Sam and said, no, this boy's kind of got it. We also have a great love for celebrity roast, the original, the 1970s and 1980s celebrity roast.
Not the current ones?
No, not the current ones. They're just a bit ugly. They punch the wrong way. He's a big fan of Don Rickles, and I'm a Jerry Lewis kind of guy. So that world, that showbiz kind of world. In fact, Sam went and saw Don Rickles at Las Vegas. And he went dressed in a suit and everything because, you got to see Rickles in Vegas. You got to go dressed up. And there was a guy next to him in like a leisure suit, like a tracky pants and tracky top. And Sam had to go at him. You're going to Las Vegas to see Don Rickles. You've got to show some respect here. So we kind of have that love for that sort of Hollywood shtick kind of.
I feel like someone dressed like that though in Vegas is actually very on brand with Vegas.
Actually, not bad. Actually, it's not a bad look, But Sam's a gem. And I'm so proud that our paths crossed at that time. And he says, to this day, says, "Geez, it's a pity I just started so later. Had all those years where I was still the same person." I said, "No, everybody has a different journey. You started at a different time. That's when you were ready."
The more you talk about Sam in such a positive light, the bigger jerk I look like for that question. But yeah, how old was he?
I suspect he would have been in his late 30s.
Yeah, wow. Okay, all right. So there's still hope for the rest of us. Let's switch to football now, because I know you and I have a shared love of football.
No, I don't know. Let's switch to this.
Okay.
So last days of Rome. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I thought it would, number one, my surname's Lawrence, right? So there had to be some mention of Italy being in a global production. Mm-hmm. People might be like, Ray Lawrence, there's no Italian connection then. Right. So we've had to also add my mother's maiden name as my middle name.
Nice, yes, to give you some cred.
Exactly right, give me some street cred. And I suppose it's an ode to the time. A lot of people seem to view
this current period of history as sort of the end times, maybe, you know, the fall of an empire in the context of the US empire?
Well,
yeah.
It's interesting because classical studies was my major in the arts part of my studies at university, and you know, it took a long time. It didn't happen just with one big fire.
No.
I mean that's like an insurance. That's an insurance fraud.
It's symbolic.
You know? So if the empires fall, I think it takes them a while to fall. And it's really interesting. So I congratulate you on the name of the show. Well done. So going back to more important stuff, football.
Yeah, well, I was, you know, over the past couple of years, I've been very emotionally invested in Ange Postecoglou's story. It's almost an addiction of mine following his career.
Me too.
What have you made of it?
I love him to death. I really do. And I'm lucky enough to have his number and stuff, and we do text each other at times. And I know when he goes quiet, he's under the pump. He's an amazing man. He really is an amazing man, and I highly recommend his autobiography. Especially for people who are trying to find their identity, either being sons or daughters of migrants or migrants themselves. It's a really interesting story. I think the Greek experience is slightly different from the Italian one.
In what way? What makes you say that?
I think that the Greek migration came a little bit later anyway, and it came at very troubled times in Greece. There was a civil war going on, so there was major devastation. There was, you know, if we think that what our parents and grandparents told us about where they came from, I think this was a bit more extreme. I think probably a little bit more poverty, and so therefore there was a lot more at play. There's a lot more at stake. And some of the stories that he tells from his early days, unbelievable.
I know the one about the mattress, right? That his father and I think
his uncle, and he and Ange himself had to carry the first thing that people do apparently in a Greek household is have the marital bed, and they didn't have a bed, and it was a real shame thing. And they found a mattress. Someone was selling a mattress or giving a mattress away. So the only way for them to get that mattress to their place in Paran was to carry it through the streets, and people were laughing at them. And Ange said, even as a little kid, he looked up. He said, "You don't know this story. You don't know how important this is. You just think we're just sort of a bunch of hobos just trying to drag this thing around. It's an important thing."
They were trying to create a home. Yeah, and I remember him talking about the fact that they got lost along the way, so now they're just walking around with a mattress for hours, and in a way that became symbolic of the fact that they were far from home and sort of lost in a way.
Unbelievable. And the relationship he had, the relationship he had with his father is as complex as anybody's relationships with their fathers, let alone being from a migrant. That chasm between the being brought up here as a kid and the upbringing that our parents or grandparents had over in the home country. So incredible stuff, incredible stories there. But so many incredible things that he did. You know, I think when he was at Brisbane Roar, he had just gone there from Melbourne Victory. I'm just trying to get the order right, but whatever.
No, he was at Brisbane first.
He was at Brisbane first and then came to Melbourne. Is that what but whatever. He was at a game where he just told the 19-year-old defender, "I don't care what you do. It's a hostile environment out there. I just want you to pass the ball out of the back line. I don't want you to hoof it out. This is possession play. It's like he's playing it at Spurs at the moment." And I think it was 2 minutes into the game or whatever, the kid tried to pass the ball inboard. It got intercepted. Melbourne Victory score a goal straight away. Everyone lets the kid have it. And Ange is shaking his head at him going, "Don't worry, don't worry about it." 4 or 5 minutes later, he gets the ball again, refuses to hoof it, plays it inboard, gets intercepted. They score another goal. Ended up losing something like 5-2 or something like that. And Ange took him aside at the end of the game in front of everybody. He said, "Guys, I want you to know that is the best thing that I've ever seen on a football field, ever." For him to keep doing that when I told him.
It's incredibly brave.
Yeah. And I think that started off their record-breaking run. They never lost a game then for...
It's like 30-something games
or something.
Which was it was a record, I think, in Australian football.
Yeah.
Even maybe joint record with the AFL. I remember
it's something ridiculous.
Yeah, it broke some record. At the moment, though, it seems as though... I don't know if the media's turning on him a bit. It feels as though... I watch a lot of talk sport, which I think is just kind of very Murdoch-inspired, very negative, basically slandering.
Slander. Yeah, that's the model.
And so I don't know. But a couple of good results. The win away to Coventry wasn't an amazing performance. Good win on the weekend in the Premier League against Brentford. It almost feels like Vicario. Did you watch the game?
I watched the game, yeah.
It almost feels as though Vicario is struggling with that a bit, struggling with playing out from the back. What do you make of him?
I love Vicario. In fact, I thought he was their best player last year. He struggled in that game.
Yeah.
I think that's always going to happen. I think Ange, he plays the long game. You know, I heard him say, I don't know whether you heard the quote last year. He said, "There's only two modes for a coach to be in. You're either under the pump or you're about to be under the pump."
Right.
So he's well aware. You don't think he knew that the honeymoon was over? He knows that. But I don't know. Good luck to him. Whether it's stubbornness or long-term vision, he's just sticking with the way he wants to play, and it's pretty uncompromising because it's interpreted as, well, where's your plan B? But where I'm with Ange, and I guess I'm blindly with him because I love him so much.
Yeah, me too.
Is that if plan A is perfectly executed, you don't need plan B. It's fun to watch and everything. Well, it's a bit scary to watch, but it's introduced something to your club that makes it. I'm in the AFL. I'm a Collingwood supporter. I haven't enjoyed myself as much in the past 2 or 3 years as ever. You know, I've been going to games since I was little. When it's fun to see your team, there's nothing like it. I know you want to win. I guess winning is important, and Spurs have got that. You know, they've got that hoodoo that's on the that's on their. Yeah, that's a monkey on their shoulder. But I do wish him all the best, and it's precarious.
For sure. I also don't agree with this narrative of needing a plan B, which is what a lot of the pundits go with. I mean, Jurgen Klopp didn't seem to have a plan B. Same with Guardiola. They have a set style, and it takes time to implement, and in the end they find success. So I'm not quite sure where this generic wisdom comes from, that, you know, coaches have to change things up dramatically. Arteta is doing that. He tends to park the bus when he goes away to bigger clubs. But for the most part, the really successful managers do what Ange is trying to do anyway.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
I think that what's happening with Ange, and Ange probably, I don't know, I've never spoken to him about it, he probably needs to evolve a little bit in the sense that the only downside about what he does is that it can be predictable, totally predictable. So, you know, in the Arsenal game, Arteta goes, okay, well, is that how you're going to play? Okay, fine. Well, we'll just keep picking at that lock and keep picking at that lock and until we do what they did. That's the hard part. So I feel a bit for Ange because you think if only he needs just slightly better cattle. That's all he needs.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with the style of play. I love the style of play.
That front three, maybe not quite world class.
It's not quite. I mean, you know, and then when Harry Kane rolls back up to Wembley and just scores goals for fun. I don't know whether Harry Kane would work in his setup anyway, but when you don't have that focal point, you know, I was just watching Son playing on that left wing, and I'm thinking, okay, is that the full use you can get out of Sonny? I'm not sure.
He wasn't quite as ruthless the last game as well. Had a couple of opportunities to shoot, decided to lay it off. I also get what you're saying about things being predictable. I remember even, you know, I watched almost every Celtic game while he was manager there, and even though the opponents knew the way Celtic were going to play, they couldn't stop it. So I feel like that's also his goal at some point, to get them firing so well that it's just unstoppable.
That's
even
right.
If you do know what they're going to do.
Absolutely. And, you know, I have friends that say, you know what, I hope he survives to Christmas. He will. I reckon he will. He'll have enough good wins before then. Geez, I hope I show this tape in the future.
Yes.
But I think he's on the cusp of a real revolution there at Spurs. I hope they stay with him for the long run.
Yeah, me too. I also just want to say, I also think Vicario is a great keeper. I wasn't criticizing him. He's an incredible shot stopper, makes good saves almost every game. I just think at the moment there's maybe a mental thing when it comes to physical pressure at set pieces, also playing out from the back. Just something to do with pressure where I feel like he's not completely comfortable, but hopefully he can get there.
Yeah. I heard some Italians talking about you know, when Liverpool beat AC Milan during the week in the Champions League, and they were talking about how it is hard for defenders to defend set pieces and things, and the pressures that are put on goalkeepers now when you surround them with players, it does put them off. There are genuine ploys and plans that you put up. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ray. Have I heard that Ange is the only coach that doesn't have a set piece coach?
That's what they say. There's also this narrative that he doesn't work on set pieces at all, which I don't believe is true.
Okay.
Because I think that actually came from Eric Dyer saying that in an interview after leaving Tottenham, that Ange doesn't work on set pieces. He denies it. But yeah, they don't have a specialist.
There's certainly, this is ringing. I hope I can remember this properly, because my boys play soccer, and one of them, I remember playing at Nunawading, which is a team down in the eastern suburbs in Melbourne, for those of you who aren't here. And Ange was in charge of the laying down their entire system, and it was all just passing the ball around. I think you want to, at junior level, not even allowed to have a shot unless you're in the area, or you get dropped. It was really serious. And I seem to remember talking to a coach there saying, no, we don't practice set pieces. That if you want to practice that in your own time, you can do that. Shots, free kicks and corners and stuff with your mates or whatever, but we just practice passing drills. It's a long time ago, though. I hope I remember that properly.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder why, because it is such a huge element of the game. It's sort of, look, it's not going to make or break a team. I don't feel like, maybe if you're in the relegation zone, being good at defending set pieces and scoring from them is very important, because that's how you pick up results. I think it's sort of blown out of proportion in the context of Tottenham. I feel like it's almost just hack pundits clutching at straws to try and criticize it.
Try and do something, yeah. And it's we all know, we all get the impression that is what the British press is, I guess, like that. I mean, that's a massive generalisation.
Michael Zapponi was saying that as well.
Is that right? Yeah.
Very negative, whereas in Australia, sorry for interrupting you.
No, not at all.
He was on the podcast and he was talking about the fact that in Australia, the football media are advocates for the game, whereas in Europe, it's not very much the case. It's really about sort of, negativity gets clicks and views. Right?
Very much so. Oh, outrage. I mean, it's why people. It's why are there current affairs shows on TV?
Right.
They want to see people. What, the neighbour did that? Who cares what the neighbour did?
You won't believe what the Dole Bludgers are doing with their welfare money. Yeah, exactly. So let's move on, because I love the story of you becoming a sort of random Juve translator. All of a sudden, when you were going for a walk, you stumbled into their press conference. You don't have to go over that again, because I'm sure a lot of people know that story, but I heard you say that you ended up on the telly that night. Did anyone call you being like, what the hell?
Did anyone call me? I don't think I did, because I never saw that on TV.
Oh, you didn't see it?
I never saw it on TV. It was sent to me by a journalist, but that was years later.
Right, okay.
Years later. I had no idea that it was on TV.
I heard you, I think on the Cultural Club podcast, talking about the fact that some of the players would go to nightclubs and they would try to get you to instigate conversations with women.
Not quite conversations, but let's say propositions.
I see. What were the lines? Do you remember any of the lines that they gave you to hit on women with?
It was usually stuff like, would you like to dance with me, or would you like to, sit down with me? There was never anything, they would never say, ask her if she wants to come back to my hotel.
Right.
There was nothing ever cracked. In fact, there was the under 21 team came out. The under 20 team came out. There were some few players that ended up playing for Italy after that, Ferri and a couple of others. Anyway, they were at the Park Royal Motel, the same place that there was the press conference. They were actually staying there. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she came from uni with me. And they didn't know that she was Italian. In fact, she had only come out from Italy not that long ago. She came out from Italy when she was about 15 or something. And they started saying all this stuff to us, going, go tell her this. And I said, that's my girlfriend. And then she came out, and so they were a bit horrified by that. And then she started speaking in Italian, and they were absolutely tails between their legs. We're so sorry. They all of a sudden they became her big brothers. You know what I mean? So they're little pussycats, if you know what I mean.
They talk a big game.
They talk a big game, but yeah.
No, I guess I was just wondering if there was any sort of, you remember the classic pickup line from the Wog Boy? If you are what you eat, by tomorrow I plan to be you. Although if there was something of that ilk,
I promise you there was nothing of that ilk. They were a lot less sophisticated than that.
Right.
They just They just wanted to make sure that the girls knew that they would say to me stuff like, do they know what my tracksuit means? And things like that. And I'd have to say, no.
Right. Did your parents believe you when you came home and told them?
Well, my dad did, because my dad was in football administration. He told me that the press conference would be there. Because I was just walking to my Zia Rosa and Zia Maria, who lived in Park Street, just, in fact, not far from here, actually, from these studios, on the Palatine Hill. So I was going there to pick up the pizza that they made, which they would make every week, and I would then take it back to Melbourne University, which is in Parkville. And I happened to be walking past the Park Royal Motel, and I remember my dad saying, oh, the Juve team is staying there. Oh, no, actually, no, they were training there. They were training there probably at Princes Park, because they were staying at a hotel in the city. But I knew that they were doing their press conference there, and I saw the vans out the front with all the antennas and everything like that. So my dad wasn't surprised. No one in my family is ever surprised by anything we do. I mean, I think what keeps my feet on the ground when you bring stuff like that up is that it's like you look fat on TV. It's that kind. It's such Italian stuff. Yeah. It's like, why can't you comb your hair better? Or your cousins say, I remember you when you used to be funny, and they're not saying it as they're just telling you how they see things.
I get that for this show. Yeah,
it's good. I don't mind it. So yeah, I come from a background where it sort of matters, but it doesn't matter. My parents are still on some of the TV shows that I appear on. I appear sometimes on a show called The Front Bar with Mick Malloy and Sam Pang, and I've got them to do a couple of sketches on it, and they'll be proud of it. They'll just tell their friends, hey, look at me on the phone. I was in something that Santo did the other day. So they're kind of happy about what I do, and they're happy to be on it, but it's no real big deal.
Yeah, fair enough.
Even though they're proud. They do tell people, every time I remember going to Rome, back in the early days, I used to stay with my second cousins. They're a bit older than me. They're second cousins, Marcella and Aramis. Both passed away, God bless them. But every time I'd arrive in Rome, I'd ask my cousin the same question. Hey, Aramis, come stai? Tutto bene? How's Marcella? Have you had your car stolen again? And is Tom Selleck still big on TV here? Same questions all the time. He answered a couple of those questions. And then he said to me, hey, your mum, she tells me you're big on TV. She tells me you're really famous on TV. And I'm going, I think my mum's exaggerating. She's proud, but she's exaggerating. And this was a long time ago. We had just done a show called Frontline. This is many years ago.
Yeah, it's like the current affairs segment.
And he said, so tell me, what are you doing on TV? And I said, oh, well, it's a sort of a satirical drama set behind the scenes in a news and current affairs show. And he looked at me and goes, why the fuck would you want to do that? What do you want to do that for?
That sounds great, though. It kind of makes me think of, The Day Today. Did you ever watch that?
The Day Today, yeah.
That sort of stuff is awesome because it's a send-up of the media, which I feel like is very much needed. So,
but you and I think that it is, but I agree with it, and I love making it, and and we still do Utopia and the Hollow Men and shows like that. However, in Italy, I understood what he means, because Italy, it treats television with the disrespect it kind of deserves. So, we get to his house and he's got a television sitting up on the fridge, and we're eating a spaghettata, and there's just half-naked women and sport on TV. So they're just going, why would you want to do a satirical drama when TV is it's just a piece of thing that...
It's not a serious thing. My cousin and I wrote a sketch, because I used to make sketches with my cousin.
Yeah.
And we never made this one, but we wanted to... it was a sketch about an Italian game show where celebrities would come on and just judge tits. That was the...
Well, you sure it's not a real show, right?
Exactly.
Well, in fact, I had the experience, one of our shows, Thank God You're Here, went to Italy. So I had the experience of actually going there to consult. Consulting actually meant they were so disorganized that I had to write the whole show for them when I was there. But it was so insane. I can't tell you how crazy it was. Apart from the fact that we shot it in the studios where Sergio Leone did his spaghetti westerns, which was mind-blowing for me. But I'll never forget the very first conversation. In fact, it was in Australia before I even went. The producer called me and she said, Allora, how long is your show? And I said, it's an hour. I said, oh, right, okay. Can it be longer? And I knew exactly where the conversation was going. And I said, look, I understand you have long shows in Italy, but it's an hour show. She said, can it be 3 hours?
Oh, man.
And I said, no, it can't be 3 hours. Can it be 1.5? And she said, can it be 2.5? And we were literally haggling for a duration of the show. In fact, I remember being at my parents' place not that long ago, 2 or 3 years ago. No, I actually wasn't even there. I rang up. I said, ciao, Ma, how's it going? What's happening? She goes, I can't talk because Mussolini's granddaughter is on Dancing with the Stars. So I can't talk. So I go, okay, whatever. So I hang up. About 3 hours later, I go over to their place to drop off some food, and Dancing with the Stars is on. And I said, did you record it? And she goes, no, it's still going.
So why is that? Is it because...
They just talk.
It's interesting you bring that up. So I didn't plan to talk about this, but what interests me is inherent contradictions in cultures. So I'll give you a very superficial example in an Australian context, which is that I feel like in Australian culture, there's a contradiction between being a frontier country, this sense of, freedom and comfort in the wilderness and being rugged. But at the same time, it's also kind of a nanny state. We're a very strict society. There's a lot of rules, a lot of social imperatives and so on. So there's a contradiction there. With Italy, I think one of the inherent contradictions that I've noticed is precisely this. On the one hand, it has a very high level of art, music, films, absolutely. I mean, think of all the wonderful historical art there. But at the same time, a lot of their stuff is kind of hack nonsense. It's kind of both.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
In fact, I one day make a film about a girl who wants to leave Australia and go to Italy where there's culture, and she ends up becoming sort of like a line producer for one of those shows, because that's what welcome to Italy.
It's either profound or like fundamentally unserious.
Well, this embodies, I reckon, the inherent contradiction. I was there in Italy for Grazie al cielo sei qui. Thank God you're here. And it's insane what they do. Rather than have comedians go through, they have celebrities, they have senators and stuff. It was crazy. And to make it longer, they had 3 judges. One of the judges was Lena Wertmuller, the art house film director from the 60s and 70s. And I'm going, that is insane. What is she doing there? And then there was a certain point where the producer, again, the same producer that spoke to me about the duration, she said, we're thinking of having a slow motion replay for the judges to watch at the end of every scenario. And I said, right, that's probably not a good idea, because we want the show to live in the moment. It's got to be in the moment. So, if you stuff up, and it's in the moment. And they said, yeah, but if you look at the slow motion replay, you look at the fear in the eyes, it heightens all that. And I'm going, oh, yeah, I guess so. And then I'm thinking, you know what? I know what you want. You just want to stretch the show out. And I said, okay, there's pros and cons, but in the end, I think it's not a good idea. And she said, there was silence, and she said, e allora la nostra seminuda cosa deve presentare? So what is our semi-nude going to present? And I laugh. And she said, what are you laughing about? I said, I'm laughing that in Italy, there's actually a technical term called semi-nude. And she looks at me and she said, I'll have you know, she's got a law degree, as if I'm the bad guy.
You're the sexist one,
the sexist guy.
Yes, we're parading a highly educated woman to be semi-naked on TV, but you're the problem.
It was such an incredible experience. So I agree that there is that. But there's also a sense of humanity to the whole thing. Even the process of, I'd be writing like crazy because the show was very unprepared, yet they would make me stop because it was time to have lunch. And we all stop and have lunch, and we're not allowed to talk about the show. It's lunch, and then halfway, during the afternoon, we have to eat some, pasticcini and things like that. It's all very, just relax. It's okay. No one's died. We're just making television.
Which is nice.
Which is nice.
If there's any disagreement, who has final say? Do you have final say?
Those things?
Yeah.
No, they're the broadcaster.
Okay.
They're the broadcaster. They've paid for the format rights.
Is that annoying when you feel like
Not particularly. It's like waving goodbye to your child on a train. So yeah, you're a little bit worried. At very worst, what you've done is you've written a piece of music, and let's say it's a reggae piece, and they've done it as country and western.
Right.
So you're going, okay, it's not really the way I thought of it, but if it works for you, that's fine. Also, we don't live in the past. We don't sit there and go, oh, how dare you do that? We just move on. We just move.
Which I feel like is a very professional approach, and perhaps why you've had success in TV, because I feel like for some people, maybe they find that to be kind of unacceptable, to have other people tamper with their writing.
Look, I luckily, one of my passions in our production, I love writing. I'm not a fan of performing, not really a fan of directing very much. I like being behind the camera, and I love editing. So one of the first things you learn in editing is you just have to learn to murder your darlings. You just kill them. When something is, we knew that the castle, when we made the castle, had to be 90 minutes long. It was too simple a story. It just has to be 90 minutes long. We had to cut out jokes. We just had to cut out jokes. But it's easy. They're just jokes. Yeah, as long as you keep the humanity, that's the important bit. Just get rid of the jokes. You're okay.
But that's you doing that. That's you. That's
Yes.
you killing.
Oh, right. You're saying
When
someone else
is doing it. I mean, that's got to feel differently, right? That's got to be kind of hurtful or frustrating, or I don't know.
Unless it's better. Unless they make it better. I try to keep open-minded about stuff. I think there was an Italian journalist from the 40s or 50s. Ugo Yeti's name was. He's not really all that well known. But he always said, don't ever mistake intelligence for the views or the actions of people who just agree with you. So you want people to challenge you all the time. So if someone comes up and says, that's too long, just get rid of that, it can be very confronting, but it can also be very liberating, going, oh, I'm so glad that someone with fresh eyes, you have to trust that person.
Right.
So it is very hard for, if these Italian guys from wherever they're from just decide to do it because they think that they need to put more ads in and for no other reason, then of course you've got to stay, whoa, just a minute, why have you done that? But otherwise, we welcome outside views on what we do. I like it.
You do, as you've mentioned, so many things. Write, act. Even though you just mentioned you don't like performing, you produce, blah blah blah. What do you really identify as though? Like what do you think you are?
Oh, right.
A
On my
writer?
passport, it's a writer. In my my arrival cards, it's writer.
Right.
That's what I do most of the time.
And that's what you love. That's what you love.
I love it to death. Before I came in here, we're recording this in the morning. I woke up at 7 o'clock this morning to start writing jokes. I love writing jokes for whatever shows we do. I love it. I love editing because it provides I love editing because it's the final draft of whatever we write, and whatever we commit to screen, we usually like to go anywhere between 9 and about 13 or 14 drafts anyway. So we keep redrafting. But I love writing jokes. I love writing jokes for other people. It keeps you 13 forever. You know what I mean? It keeps you just a little kid the whole time. And sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, wow, what's happened here? This is a bit weird, because I don't feel like what the external shows. I was brought up in a family that where all the males were pretty much funny and dry. My dad, who's 94 and a half now, he's been quite sick, but oh my God, his sense of humor is
Still there?
It's unbelievable. He won't mind me saying this, but he was almost dead and buried. I thought I was at his deathbed. We're in hospital, we're in emergency. And he was skeletal, he had his mouth out, he was not well at all. He's really good now, but he wasn't well at the time. And I'll never forget, the emergency doctor came in and got a shock when she saw him. And she looked down at him and she said, Vito, are you all right? And he just looked up and he said, he just did this, and I cracked up, and he didn't crack. He never cracks up at anything. And then there was a speech pathologist. He was having trouble swallowing his food, and she said to him, Vito, I need to know how strong you are. See this food that we give you here at the hospital. Are you able with your own hands to feed yourself? He said, no, but with my own hands, I can pick it up and throw it out the window. So I was brought up in a family like that. The first time my dad ever my mum and dad were invited over to my current wife's place, my wife's place, my current wife. She's my wife. Everyone was nervous because the families had sort of just met and all that kind of stuff. And my dad sits down and for dinner, and he says to my mother-in-law, Maria, I need to go home. And she goes, what for? He goes, I need to get a fork. She'd forgotten to put a fork out there. And he just, but really straight-faced, I've got to go home, I've got to get a fork, So I've been surrounded by straight-talking men and ridiculously crazy women, just nutcases on my mum's side. They're nuts. So, and performers, a bit histrionic.
Characters.
Yeah, real characters. So I was never able to be, I was never at all the class clown or anything like that. I used to write at school. I used to write for the school reviews and theatre and stuff like that. Never the class clown, but always surrounded by funny people and always had a camera in my hand. Somehow I was always the designated Super 8 chronicler of baptisms and First Holy Communion and stuff like that.
I've got an uncle like that.
Oh, right.
He's just stuck with that role.
That's it, just stuff. And uncles would come back from Italy, and Nonni would come back from Italy and go, I got you a new camera. And he'd go, but I didn't sign up for this.
It wasn't an agreement.
Exactly.
They say that comedy comes from pain, and learning about you, it sounds like you had a great childhood. You've spoken about the fact that your childhood had no trauma. So is that platitude wrong, or are you the exception to the rule?
No, I think that I've got a feeling that I saw this written somewhere, that the classical description of hedonism is not the pursuit of pleasure, but it is finding pleasure in pain and pain in pleasure. Because it's just it's a very Sicilian thing. It's the opposite side of a coin. So therefore, the reason that I went through so much pleasure last year to see Collingwood win a premiership is of all the pain that I went through for them to get there. And the reason that I went through the pain this year of them not making the 8 was because it's the flip side of the pleasure. So
the bad stuff makes the good stuff better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in a blessed home. I laugh at, when Joe Vardy does his stand-up about how he used to get hit by his dad or whatever, I find that hilarious, even though it never happened to me. In fact, I think my very first joke was there was a guy called Don Pepe, who when they were playing cards on a Friday night, us kids were making too much noise, and he basically rolled up and said, hey, you know what's going to happen if I take my belt off? And I said, yeah, your pants are going to fall down. And my parents still say, that was your first joke. And so you get to, and I got to see some horrific things as a kid growing up in Italian families of abuse. I saw bad abuse. I saw bad treatment of women. I saw irresponsible treatment of kids. But that and all that contributes, I think, to the passion that you have with writing and being in touch with humanity and knowing what it means, what pleasure means and what pain means, I think.
How has, you've been doing this for decades. How do you think the comedy scene in Australia has changed? And how has your writing changed to suit that? What would be different, 30, 40 years ago?
Wow, that's a really good question, Ray, because the world has changed. The world has changed since we did Santo Cilauro Cup Fever in 2010. We have a strange two-sided kind of head to the way we do things. We love whatever we do, but we won't do it if we end up in debt at the end. So
if you end up in debt?
So therefore, everything has to pay the bills. Okay? Right. So we're practical in that sense. We're also practical when it comes to creativity. Don't have a battle that you don't want to have.
With networks?
Anywhere. You don't want to embarrass your network. A network has had to go to the federal court for us when we got sued by by Kerry Packer when we were doing a show called The Panel. It went all the way to the High Court because he was angry with us, and we ended up winning. But the broadcaster had to carry the can for us.
What was that for? What was that joke for?
It was because there was about 10 or 11 instances where we showed stuff from Channel 9 for fair review and criticism, which you're allowed to do on television if you're not part of the same network. However, they were arguing that it wasn't for fair review and criticism. It was for the sake of a joke.
But that's also covered under fair dealing. Satire is covered.
They were just saying there's actually no. If it's just for a joke,
I'm pretty sure, isn't satire part of fair dealing? I'm pretty sure it is.
Well, maybe since we won the case. Maybe since we won the case, because it was in the early 2000s. So maybe it didn't exist before then. I'm not sure. But you don't want to waste your time having social. I mean, I'm not on socials or anything like that, but Working Dog is. The people that are on our shows, they might say something on, have you been paying attention? Which then I go, oh, I've copped so much flack online from this. Can we remove it from the template? Okay, of course we can. No joke is ever that precious that you just say, oh, no, this stays. It's just a joke. You just don't want to waste your time on, there are more important battles to have. If people say, I'm sorry, we just don't, we just don't want to broadcast this show, or we won't have that particular comedian on the show. That's the battle you want to have. No. She's good. She's good, and she's got things to say, and we want her to say them. Or we've got things to say about how infrastructure money is being wasted in this country. We don't care about the fact that you might have your budget money compromised by doing a show like this. It's important to have it on. That's a battle worth having, not a battle about, have I offended this? Well, you know what?
I agree. Pick your battles. No joke is sacrosanct, right? But someone might argue that by being too willing to cut out material based on, a potential social media reaction, you are tailoring your art for the zeitgeist.
Absolutely. And I don't reckon that's on. Absolutely not. Completely not. Where comedy finds itself in an awkward situation, and it's a bind, I think, and that is that jokes are based on generalizations. You know what I mean? I mean, why did they make Irish jokes? Why in Italy do you make jokes about carabinieri? Do people really say carabinieri are stupid? No, they're just saying, here's the generalization because I want to make a joke about, it's like a blonde joke or something like that. No one's really saying all blonde people are dumb. They're just saying, well, to make this a shortcut, I'll just say two blondes walking, whatever it is. So,
right.
Therein lies the problem. You're making generalizations. People saying you can't make generalizations. Lionel Shriver, the great, she's a great novelist. She says that now that writers have sensitivity readers and not just editors, they're in a real bind. So she says that, let's say there was an American writer. She wrote quite a famous novel 2 or 3 years ago about the plight of people coming through the southern border, okay? Until they found out that she was a privileged white female, and they said, well, you can't write about that. We thought you were and she said, well, why can't I? I can, and that was cultural appropriation. Right. She was being criticized for that. Well, Lionel Shriver says that here's the problem. Me as a writer, if I start writing about what it's like to live with a Zulu tribe or something like that, I'll be hit for cultural appropriation. However, if I'm writing a story as a white, middle-aged, privileged, lesbian Irish woman, if I write about where I came from, I'll be criticized for perpetrating a stereotype. And you go, so where are you? So you're stuck. When we made The Castle, people said, oh, is this an analogy for Aboriginal, displacement of land, all that kind of stuff? Or is this a representation of the working class Australian family? And you go, it's not a representation of anything. It's a story. If anything, they're very affluent. They've got 5 cars and got greyhounds, got a speedboat. All the stories are based on our parents who were, they were middle class or whatever they are. It's just the story. It's not intended to be anything but what the story is. And the story is about not wanting to lose your home. Mm. You're not representing any group of people.
It's a human story.
It's a human story. It's a fable. And it's a very Italian story. It's not strangely enough. It's not. I think The Castle is much more an Italian story from the films I saw in the 70s at the cinema growing up in Collingwood and Clifton Hill than it is, a quintessential Australian story.
Interesting. But it has become such a classic Australian film. It has a really prominent role in Australian culture, nonetheless. How do you feel about that? The fact that something you created occupies such a space.
I feel very happy and very proud that the stories came from our parents, all our parents. the people who wrote the film. So therefore, it does make me laugh, and it makes me feel happy when my dad says, he was a solicitor in Sydney Road, Brunswick, and he said, a lot of things that happened to the solicitor in that film also happened to me. I said, and I laugh. I go, well, they did. And so therefore, that makes us happy. We love the fact that it was made as a practice movie. It wasn't even intended to really be made as a movie. We had written The Dish, which was our second film. No one wanted to make The Dish, so we thought, let's make it ourselves. But in order to make it ourselves, we'll have to go back and make a practice movie, which was The Castle.
So The Castle was a warm-up for The Dish.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit about why you started a production company? So there's 4 of you, Working Dog Production. Was the idea that by having your own production company, pitching to networks becomes easier?
Probably. I think we were a production company only because it was kind of handy. I mean,
Right.
we had been doing a show called The Late Show, which was a group of about 7 of us. And then a couple of them, our great friends, Mick Malloy and Tony Martin, who we're still great friends with, they wanted to go out and do some stand-up comedy on their own. Jason Stevens went out and produced some wonderful stuff himself up in Sydney, really, really top quality stuff. And we just stayed, we just sort of, the rest just stayed there and said, well, I think we made something called Frontline straight away. And we just formed a production company. Yes, it is easier to make. It is easy to pitch, especially at the time when everything was made in networks at the time. So you went to the ABC and they made it for you.
Right.
We went there and said, no, we want to control our means of production. We'll make it for you and you can buy it.
Have you been reading Marx?
I don't know what we were reading at the time. In fact, we probably weren't reading anything at the time. We were just had been very frustrated that comedy's hard. Comedy's hard. You know that. Especially on TV and on radio, because the inception of the idea, point A, and the execution of the idea, point B, there's stuff that happens in it. There's interference all the time. So all you're doing is that when you think of the pure idea, it's 100% in your head. You know it's never going to be 100% whether you get up in front of a microphone, in front of people or whatever, because there's production. It just gets degraded. So the less amount of interference between those 2 points, the more pure the idea. And we felt that by directing, acting, editing and doing all that stuff ourselves, doing the catering, everything, doing ourselves, was going to result in a purer output. With The Castle, I went to the Kodak factory in Coburg when it was still there, and I just said, this is how much money we got. How much 35mm film can we buy? And the guy said, oh, not much, but you can buy 90 minutes worth of a Super 16, which you can blow up to 35 and then you can project. I said, yeah, we'll buy that. We bought 180 minutes worth of film. And we said to the actors, we've got 180 minutes worth of film. We haven't even written a film yet. We're going to write a 90-minute film. You've only got 2 takes to get it right. They said, fine. We went away, wrote it really quickly. Our production manager, who's now our CEO, she said, we can make this in 14 days with bad catering or 10 days with good catering. We went with the 10 days good catering and did it that way.
I feel like that would almost never be done now. 10 days.
It probably could. And you know what?
Could, but...
And you know what? We still think it could have been done in less.
Really?
We're forever saying, Frontline got cut up. Channel 7 bought Frontline after it was shown on the ABC, and it's now about to be shown on the ABC again. But they had to cut it down because of ads, and we loved it. We loved cutting it down. Just when you didn't think you could cut anything more, we just said, it's got to be cut from 30 minutes into 26 and a half.
Why did you like that? Is it because it makes it sharper?
We love cutting stuff. We love cutting stuff. If I looked at The Castle now, I'm sure that I'd sit there and go, oh, did we really need that bit?
Okay, so you're just trimming the fat, basically.
All the time.
Yeah.
Comedy is just economy, I think.
Yeah, interesting. I wanted to ask you, so in 2016, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, I'm genuinely curious. So you guys had created a cartoon, Pacific Heat.
Oh, right.
What I wanted to ask you about was, if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, there's a huge difference between the critics score and the audience score. So it's 17% for critics, but 75%.
Is that right? Okay, wow, that's interesting.
So yeah, does it say anything to you about the disconnect between, I guess, those in the industry and everyone else?
We learned from a very young age that one of the advantages of being in this industry for so long is that you learn very early not to read critics, especially when it comes to comedy. I mean, do I really want to read someone in the Australian telling me that that the new Adam Sandler film is rubbish? Or do I want to hear my brother-in-law say, oh, mate, I saw this film, it's hilarious? You know what I mean? I know who I want to listen to. When it comes to comedy, I mean, it's just taste is taste. So I had no idea about that. But, mind you, Ray, you could have told me it was the other way around. I don't know. One of my favourite shows that we did was called Funky Squad, which I think that maybe the audience liked. I'm not sure. I know it didn't really resonate, but I loved it. So it doesn't mean anything whether it's loved or not loved. That's why I love Nick Cave so much. He just moves on. You know what I mean? He's obviously a proud artist and a real, he sculpts his stuff very carefully, and he's a real artist. But he also moves on, and that's why I love Woody Allen. He'll just move on and still keep making movies. Just keeps making them.
Tell me a bit about collaboration, because you've been working with the same people for decades. How difficult is that?
I can imagine people struggling with collaboration. We're in an almost impossibly singular situation where we all met at university. We were doing our courses at university. We were united by our passion for doing comedy reviews. So we ended up doing comedy reviews together. So our friendship predates our professional collaboration.
Right.
So
is that the key, you think?
Well, yeah, but how can you do that? You can't create a friendship in order to get a collaboration happening. We don't have time to do that. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted to collaborate, if you love a collaboration and wanted to work on a horror film with some people, you can't cultivate a friendship before you do that. Hopefully you can click and get on together. But we go back a long time. So therefore, when someone comes in and says, I think that's not a particularly good storyline, you've got to lose that character and move on. You don't sit there and go, oh, geez, well, I worked on it. You just go, thank you. That's great. That's such a shortcut. Great. You've saved me a lot of time at that point. The other advantage as well is that you learn to understand and perceive other collaborative voices, and that is, it's a true democracy. So you vote on stuff. However, if there's one dissenting voice going, I'm sorry, that's the wrong time slot. That if we really think that that's the time slot, I'm telling you, it's wrong for this show. I really, really think that it's the wrong time slot. We've got to move it here, or we're stuffed. You sit there and go, oh, okay, right. I'd better rethink this, because I'm sure would have been like what it was like in Athens, that in the early days of democracy, where the loudest voice also got a bit of like, oh, okay, well, why are they so passionate? Mm-hmm. So there are little nuances inside the collaborations, inside the collaborative process. Probably the best one is that when you're in that kind of situation, taking time off is so important. You mightn't be able to do that if you've got your career as a singular person. You've got a career. You mightn't be able to take a break. I'm sorry, I'm too hot at the moment. I've got to press this. I've got to keep doing this. Whereas if you're all contributing, you go, guys, I'm sorry, I do have to take 4 weeks off. I've got to do it, because if we want to keep writing for the next 5 years, I'm at that point. Are we okay? How are we going? You do this, you do that. I can Zoom a couple of things. You work around it. So in a practical level, it's amazing.
I'll let you go after this, because you've been very kind with your time, but the 5th season of Utopia recently came out. Can you tell me a bit about, was there much research involved in workplaces or government bureaucracy that went into that show? Because presumably you haven't worked in either of those spaces.
It's a pretty simple answer, right? Rob Sitch loves politics. He loves the way politics is played out. He loves the games that are played there. He loves the ploys and all that kind of stuff. So he's a massive reader on stuff. So he'll provide, guys, have a look at this. This came out in a financial review this week. It's an amazing article about what they're doing in Western Australia on nuclear power or whatever it is. Or we'll watch on the news. We'll text each other. Did you see this on the news? Did you see this interview? So there's always little sparks of, that's a sort of a funny idea. We're surrounded by whiteboards in our boardroom, and we just throw ideas up all the time. There's always ideas there. And after a certain, we never know whether there's going to be a next season. There's just ideas that go up. when there's a critical mass of ideas, we'll go, hey, there might be 6 solid shows here with subplots, subplots, and a few things like that. I might concentrate on stuff like, why people don't use the recycling bin, or there's a new ping pong table, because that's the end of the pool that I play at. I'm not in the Rob Sitch end of the pool. I wish I could, but I just can't. So we all contribute in that way. What happens at the end is we never, ever try and find out exactly what would be happening in that situation. We always join the dots ourselves. And then we might consult with someone in that area. So we'll get an ex-foreign minister. When we were doing the Hollow Men, we would talk to ex-cabinet ministers just to say, hey, look, we've written an episode about, how Australia should respond to, an Indonesian invasion of an island or whatever. This is what we've written. Is this completely absurd? What kind of language would be used in this situation? How would you talk to ambassadors? Would the ambassador visit the Prime Minister, or do you do it through the foreign minister? We go through the technicalities of it. And 80% of the time, it's like, no. That's what does happen. 10% of the time, it's like, yeah, no, that's not quite what is said. This is what would happen in this situation. The other 10% of the time is that, guys, you haven't gone far enough. I've got to tell you that when I was in government, this happened. And most of the times there, you'd be going, you realize I can't put that in the show because no one would believe that reality is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's the process we have. So we've met some wonderful people along the way. And the strike rate of people saying, I've got a storyline for you is about 0%.
Oh, really?
As in, here's what happened. If it's either too crazy, or, you know what, it's probably a little bit too predictable, or, it's just not quite, it doesn't have a spark enough. It's not, doesn't have as much juxtaposition that you want it to have. It's a bit linear or whatever.
I remember the scene where there's a sort of security meeting, and I can't remember if they were generals or admirals or whatever, were trying to subtly portray China as the enemy, and
they wouldn't say the word China.
Great scene. Yeah.
And we have so much fun with that, and that's why we, as the more seasons have got on, we've tried to get more and more comedians to play the parts. It's so hard for Rob as a director to explain to a very good actor, oh no, this is why it's funny. You just want comedians to be there and go, at the read-through, they kind of get it. You just want them to know their lines.
Santo, this was a really great chat. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ray. And I always love a chat where I get to learn a little bit more about myself and what I do as well. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy that? Well, then why not subscribe? What's wrong with you? This is why people are worried about you, the choices you make. Click the little subscribe button and make people proud.